It is very early in the morning when Sarah is woken up by her toddler, Jessie. Nobody else is sleeping with them, and as the kid rolls around the bed, Sarah's eyes seem bleak, as if she were reluctant to drag herself into another day. It is only for a moment, though. Jessie soon manages to brighten her face and make her laugh. After a few minutes of playing around in their garden, Sarah calls her husband, who seems to be on a long working trip. Skype is lagging irritatingly, but the way Dean speaks to her and Jessie is much more nerve-wracking. He appears to be eager to get away from this call as quickly as possible. He comes up with the blurry and casual excuse that his bosses always return his finished projects for further repolishing. He's sure that they are going to continue doing that for the time to come, but he doesn't give a clear answer as to when he's going to be back. Naturally, Sarah has a problem with it. Handling a toddler alone is in itself tough, not mentioning that a child needs a father. The fact that Dean's answers and justifications are always hazy and vague, coupled with his uninterested, indifferent attitude, troubles Sarah a lot. She feels abandoned. As their day progresses, we see how tough the bond between the mother and daughter is. Sarah does everything in her power to provide the best and most warm and adventurous childhood possible to Jessie, and so far, she seems successful in that. In moments of loneliness, however, she can't help but feel disconnected from reality. She feels that her life isn't what it is supposed to be. Something is missing, and it seems as if she's drowning. In the next scene, the two go to a train station to pick up Mindy, Sarah's best friend. As it appears, they haven't seen each other in a very long time. The embrace is relieving to Sarah, but her recent attitudes still begin to show while driving back to her house. Knowing her best friend, Mindy notices this very quickly and asks her what is wrong, but the answer is that everything is okay. Sarah manages to keep everything to herself for now, but the presence of the familiar and caring face invites tears insistently. And soon, she shares everything with Mindy. She only sees Dean once every 2 months. She feels left behind and depressed. Dissociated from reality, she feels as if she is going insane, and even though the pills she's taking are supposed to help, they scarcely relieve her from the pain within. Mindy says to her what every good friend should do in these kinds of circumstances. After giving Sarah the encouragement she needs, she assures her that she isn't alone. It isn't fair that she has been going through this alone for such a long time. Now what they should do is change gears, have some fun, and relax. After giving her a drink in secret, Mindy gets behind the wheel in her place, and for the first time after a while, Sarah feels wind in her hair. They get on the road and have their first stop near a playground. Jessie goes off to play with another kid, and after a few minutes of being anxious about this, Sarah manages to start talking about her college years with Mindy. The two remember the days they spent together and the partners they had during those years, and as it seems, Mindy is currently engaging in similar responsibility-free kinds of relationships as before. To Sarah, this conversation appears to be a window into a life free from anxiety and dark thoughts. She is already a little tipsy when Jessie comes back with one of her new friends and has a micro tantrum about eating a pizza. Sarah is in no state of mind to handle it perfectly, so stress returns to her as Jessie cries in her ears. Finally, the two manage to just send her off to resume playing. They arrive at a rodeo in the next scene, and while getting some hot dogs, they meet a cowboy named Neil. He hands them the change they forgot to take, and in this way, he strikes up a conversation. Mindy seems to like him immediately. Neil seems to be about to ride today, and he's happy to show them around. His communication with Jessie is lovely. He shows some of his friend bulls to her, before engaging in a long talk with Mindy. Sarah can't help but be a little uptight throughout the whole process. She and Mindy seem to be quite opposite in that regard. After an exciting show, she comes up to her and Neil and asks her to get going. It's getting late, and Jessie's bedtime approaches. Neil is especially bummed about it, but he's unable to change anything. The road trip is strangely melancholy for Sarah. She feels as if she has been returned to a place where the street doesn't have reign over other, positive emotions. Jessie is put to bed in the next scene, and the friends start playing Truth or Drink. Innumerable secrets are being put forward by Sarah now. Even Mindy is taken aback by the things she used to do in bed with Dean. Many things that are said here have no clear significance, but many do. Namely, Sarah remembers the time she had a threesome with Dean and the woman he chose to do it with. Even though she agreed to do it back then, it troubles her even now as she remembers it. She appears to only have done it to not look weird or jealous. Speaking of threesomes, Mindy remembers the time she almost had a threesome with Sarah and one other guy from college. Recalling the memory, she says that Sarah broke it off at the last moment, and it bummed her out a lot. She wanted her there. It's been a very long time since Sarah has drunk so much. Soon she gets intoxicated, and the game is put to an end. Overwhelmed by emotions, tears come falling from her face, and she suddenly finds herself sobbing for everything. The moment is extremely intimate between the friends, and as Mindy shares her best friend's biggest sorrows, she leans closer to her to soothe her pains. Soon, they find themselves kissing each other softly. Sarah's face is bright the next day as they drive away. She doesn't just see happiness. She appears to be on the verge of a new life full of positive, colorful possibilities. The dreadful, bleak existence is already left behind. That day, the trio goes to an amusement park, and Sarah's face becomes progressively more and more expressive. As Jessie screams her heart out at one of the attractions, she's looking over at Mindy with a meaningful glance. Waving back and forth in the air, they are both quietly sharing eye contact. Just like Jessie, they are on their own private adventure, and just like her, they soon begin screaming savagely. It must have been a lifetime since Sarah emptied her guts like that. An incredibly wide array of emotions just leave her being and are freed into the world. Paradoxically enough, she doesn't feel emotional afterwards at all. It's quite the contrary. They are sleeping together in one bed in the next scene, when Sarah is woken up by a phone call. Slowly and almost draggingly, she answers it with a mournful hello. It appears to be Dean on the other side of the line. Afterwards, at the breakfast table, Sarah seems to be quite affected by the phone call. There was nothing significantly different about it. He just called to check on Jessie, and didn't even get interested in how she was doing, where she was, or whom she was with. After sharing this over the table, Mindy shoots a direct and heavy question at her. In almost a casual manner, she asks Sarah if she still loves him. The thinking process is long and dragging, and the answer is that she doesn't know. It is clear that Mindy was expecting a different answer. The fact that Sarah still has a bond with her husband, and that her answer isn't directly negative, especially after what happened between her and Mindy that night, seems to trouble her a lot. Sarah appears to be viewing their connection as an impromptu, temporary relief from their desperate existence, and Mindy cautiously expects something different from her. To her, their kissing and sleeping together hold much more meaning. She's gloomy and distant throughout the rest of the trip that afternoon. Evening comes in silence, and in the next scene, as they make a stop at a gas station, we suddenly see Mindy entering a supermarket and buying the next ticket out of this place. Sarah is shocked when she finds out that Mindy is leaving so soon. She's speechless as she comes up with the excuse that she has some work stuff to take care of. She adds that Sarah and Jessie seem fine now, and should be ready to continue it from here on their own. Acting casually, Mindy hugs her goodbye and leaves her standing there. She seems hurt that she's doing it, but clearly, she needs to go. Perhaps she's even waiting for Sarah to stick her neck out and ask her to stay, but the latter remains silent and sorrowful. Feeling abandoned again, she feels as if a rope is being wrapped around her waist, and it's about to drag her back inside the bleak, glassy existence. She cries her heart out afterwards in silence as she gets back home together with Jessie. We leave Sarah and her story at this point, and pick it up after 3 years have passed. Sarah is driving to New York, trying to come up with a perfect answer to Jessie's difficult question. The latter is interested in asking Santa for a little brother or a little sister this Christmas. Sarah manages to satisfy her curiosity, and from the conversation that follows, we learn that they are going to Mindy's wedding. As it seems, Sarah and Mindy haven't really been talking much after what happened 3 years ago, but the latter still asked her to come to her wedding. In the next scene, as the girls start preparing for the wedding, Sarah's phone runs out of battery, and she calls Dean to help her find the address that was given to her by Mindy. At this point, it isn't clear what kind of relationship they currently have. The following day, Sarah and Jessie appear at the ceremony area and meet the bride. Jessie doesn't remember Aunt Mindy anymore. When the two are left alone, Sarah hopes to have a small but private conversation with her. But Mindy quickly calls her future husband, Leif, and introduces him to her. We can't really discern his character from the short conversation that follows. The introduction ends up very brief and filled with awkward pauses, but it's nothing unbearable. Afterwards, Mindy and Sarah make their way along the area, teasing about ordinary stuff until some other people are introduced to the latter. They walk up to Lily, Mindy's maid of honor from San Francisco. They seem to have met each other at work, and to her dissatisfaction, Sarah finds out that Mindy has never mentioned her to Lily, her new best friend. Mindy goes over to Leif then and leaves Sarah with Lily and Leif's younger sister. Here, Sarah finds out that during the rehearsal dinner, everybody should come up with a dad joke. She manages to socialize quite easily, but somehow, it is shown in her movements that she's feeling a little uncomfortable here. Even though Mindy has been a very important person in her life, she hardly knows anybody at her wedding. As the day progresses, she scarcely speaks with anybody. The same cannot be said about Jessie, however, who cheerfully becomes friends with everybody. By the evening, the time of their departure comes, and after saying goodbye to Leif, Sarah is expecting Mindy to walk her out to her car, but suddenly the bride is called by somebody, and she gives Sarah a brief hug. It all seems almost forced from her side. That night, however, something unexpected happens. Sarah is watching TV in her hotel room when she hears someone knocking on her door. Opening it, she sees a drunk Mindy holding a bottle of wine, looking forward to a fun night with her friend. She chants how much she loves her, and shares her plans to go downstairs and drink at a bar, but the responsible mother acts as such, takes the bottle from her hands and puts her to bed. Mindy falls asleep very soon. The next morning, she wakes up gloomy and hangover-like. She gives out a quiet morning to Sarah, who seems to have scarcely slept, and tries to get back to sleep. She offers her a cup of coffee, but suddenly, Mindy is reminded that she's already late to her preparations. She must leave as quickly as possible. Gathering up all her energy, she jumps up, encourages herself, and gets out hurriedly. Sarah feels that something is extremely off. As Mindy walks away from the hotel, she runs after her and asks if they can talk. She's been feeling lonely here, and Mindy has almost been avoiding her, with the exception of last night's drunken sleepover. The latter, however, doesn't think that there is much to talk about between them. She's just too overwhelmed with the wedding, and hardly has time to spend with her old friend. She's glad that Sarah is here, though. Saying this, she finishes up the conversation and runs away. She clearly doesn't want to face the fact that there is an enormous distance between them, and it has to be addressed. That afternoon, Sarah agrees to help out with the wedding and pick up Mindy's mom from the airport. Before doing that, she and Jessie spend quite a delightful time with Leif and his mother. Jessie seems to like both of them a lot, and so does Sarah. The latter, however, soon finds herself troubled by the fact that while she's doing all that stuff for Mindy, the bride is having a message with Leif's younger sister. These bitter thoughts, however, quickly evaporate from her heart as she listens to Jessie giving out direct questions to Leif about his father's passing. The latter handles those questions with surprising wisdom and warmth, giving Jessie an idea that is sad but endurable and even beautiful. He says that when someone perishes, they make their way into their loved ones' hearts and reside there. They become invisible, but still continue to live. Over the course of the next few minutes, Leif manages to connect with Jessie and become a good friend with her. It all goes to a point where Jessie denies following Sarah to the airport. Leif says that it's fine. He will gladly watch her before she comes back. Sarah can see what a great person he is. The meeting with Mindy's mother, Jessica, and the drive back from the airport are dreadful experiences for Sarah, especially after spending time together with the groom's family. Jessica seems selfish and negative. Even though she gives out questions to make a conversation during the trip, she maintains the same dark, indifferent look about her the whole time. To Sarah, the question about Dean and her relationship with him is the most unpleasant. She responds that they are currently separated. In the next scene, she brings in Jessie to get dressed. Mindy is here too, choosing her wedding attire. For a while, Sarah just stands there struggling to find her place, until the bride turns to her and apologizes that she wasn't a more important part of the wedding. She is supposed to have a more important role than the mother of a flower girl. Her excuse as to why she didn't ask her to be her maid of honor is that she didn't think she would want it, or agree with it. Mindy doesn't want this wedding to be a drag on Sarah, and the latter responds that it is really cool. She is right in thinking that Sarah wouldn't want to immerse herself in a role that would attract a lot of attention to her. Even though this conversation doesn't resolve a lot, it's still relieving for both. That evening, during the rehearsal dinner, a funny, but extremely dirty, joke is said by Lily in front of Jessie. At first everybody, especially Sarah, is taken aback, but soon they all start laughing. Jessie seems clueless as to what the adults are so excited about. The bachelorette party comes about then, and naturally, the little kid will have no place there. She is left with Jessica that night while Sarah tries to have some fun. Throughout most of the party, with only a few exceptions, a wide smile is maintained on her face, but still she appears to have a sort of melancholy look to her. She fails to fully immerse herself in the process of having an irresponsible amount of fun at first. But soon, as they leave an apartment that was rented for this particular occasion, she manages to forget about the stuff that is making her life bitter. She drinks a lot and dances her mind away in a club. She feels excited and energetic. As she dances with Mindy, she feels a glimpse of connection that was lost 3 years ago, and it is evident in her movements that Mindy is having the same thoughts. Going over to the bar, perhaps even to escape feeling strong and unfit emotions for a bachelorette party, she orders some drinks and shares a long, meaningful gaze with Sarah as their palms touch. Untold, unshared, and wind-blown love is transmitted through this touch, and gradually, the two find themselves getting closer and closer to one another until their lips touch. After just a few seconds of a tender kiss, Mindy seems guilty. She breaks away softly and leaves Sarah standing alone at the bar. The dawn breaks cold and foggy. Sleepless Sarah is still laying in bed, reflecting on what happened last night. Mindy doesn't seem to be particularly excited for the wedding either. While having breakfast together with her mom, she has an empty, dark expression, and Jessica's monologue that suddenly takes place doesn't help her at all. Jessica thinks that this look is about her, and decides to address the problem of her motherhood. Seeing the distance between herself and her daughter, she feels that Mindy is accusing her of doing a terrible job as a mother. She wants her to know that she did her best in the given circumstances. Naturally, Mindy has no intention to address this issue now. The only thing she needs right now is a supportive mother by her side. But what Jessica says next isn't at all supportive, even though it might seem quite logical. Watching her daughter's gloomy expression, Jessica asks her why she's getting married. Clearly, the answer is that she doesn't know. After an hour and a half, both Sarah and Mindy are ready for the wedding. The bride looks wonderful, but she can't help but feel that something is off. At first, she turns to her veil and her makeup, hoping that changing them up will free her from this feeling. But eventually, she comes to the conclusion that she should ask everybody other than Sarah to leave her room and give her a minute to settle down. Initially, two masks have a conversation with one another, talking about how scary the wedding is. But very soon, Mindy feels short of breath and rushes outside. Grabbing a bottle of alcohol, she gets behind a building and takes a sip. After a blanket is thrown around her shoulders, she expresses that she just has to be far away from this wedding at this moment, and asks Sarah to go for a walk. The latter is reluctant, but she still follows her into the woods. The walk is quiet. Mindy is reflecting on herself deeply, trying to figure out what she should do. The light wind, sunlight, and quiet time together slowly make them lose their masks. Sitting on a ridge shortly after, they sit together, fully open to one another. Everything that has been truly troubling them deep inside comes to the surface now, including the talk about how they missed each other for 3 years, and how scared they were to give one another a call. There was love between them then, and there is love between them now. For the first time in their lives, they admit this fully to themselves and to each other, and watch the sun set across the horizon. They are still there when the woods become shady. Looking deep into Sarah's eyes, Mindy says that she will always love her, and embracing the meaning they hold for each other, the two return to the wedding. Sarah watches the ceremony with an anxious, sorrowful smile. After a big struggle, she manages to keep her tears inside as the love of her life becomes married in front of her. She's even able to steal a bright smile from herself as Mindy kisses her husband passionately. In the end, she shares a meaningful, soft embrace with Mindy, and, letting go of her love, takes the hand of her daughter.